The president is tweeting in high gear. He wants you to believe that his campaign was spied on, and it's one of the worst things that we've ever seen from government. He's taking on former members of the intelligence community as well, in the form of James Clapper. Bold claims. Listen to this. Spygate could be one of the biggest political scandals in history. CNN political analyst and New York Times White House correspondent Maggie Haberman joins us now. Now, as Allison and I always kind of have confused conversations about, he could just pick up the phone and know the truth of what was done and not done. Now, what he chooses to do with that information is up to him.
Right.
He is taking another path, and it is a path of distraction and of spreading negative possibilities. Mm-hmm. We know that they came out and said, the feds, there was no implant.
Right.
We know they see spy as a pejorative in general. But this is our clearest indication recently that he wants people to believe something that distracts from Mueller, that hurts that probe, and he's going all in, apparently.
Not only is he going all in, I think what he did this week is actually substantially different than what we have seen him do in the past in terms of his aggressive attempts to undermine the federal law enforcement agencies that were both looking at Russian interference in the 2016 election and then obviously the Mueller probe that has continued on. What he did in terms of trying to set the terms by which he could learn information that related to the investigation into his own campaign this week. We saw him consult with his personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, and then issue a directive to the Department of Justice based on that. That is shocking, and that is something that, try to imagine if a President Clinton or President Obama or President George W. Bush did that, what the reaction would be. And right now, it's getting a relative shrug because we have seen so much of this. He is doing more than just sort of sending up a flare. This is the President of the United States telling people, don't believe what this federal government is doing. And that has very, very dangerous consequences.
This is also called in other corners, what he's calling spying, good police work. When the Australian government calls the FBI and tells them we have very good reason to believe that somebody on the periphery of the Trump campaign has been infiltrated or has been at least influenced by the Russians. What does he want the FBI to do with that information?
Right. To your point, what we are seeing him do is what we have seen him do with a bunch of different industries at a bunch of different points, which is rip things from context, take normal process for whatever that industry is, and then make it sound sinister and make it sound like it's bad. There is, as far as we know, nothing that was done wrong here. That does not mean that the FBI does everything perfect. That does not mean that people should not be questioning of authority. But what he is doing is say, throw everything out except for what I tell you because my voice is the only one you can believe. And that, again, is very dangerous.
It's interesting here in terms of what's going on. I mean, if he didn't have so many people around him saying and doing things that raised suspicions, this wouldn't have gone on. And we have to remember, the FBI, from James Comey's own mouth, said, we made a decision not to say anything about the Trump probe. And then he gives explanations about he didn't want to alert people that they were being looked at, whatever. He only talked about the Clinton one. So, you have to ask, what is the basis for why they were looking? What is the context of Trump's grievance? Now, we should get answers tomorrow. But for some reason, they've decided to poison that well by just having Nunes and Gowdy go. I don't know why they're doing that. We were just talking about it with Jim Jordan. Doesn't it make it like zero chance that whatever reckoning they come out of that meeting with will be unsatisfying?
Sure, it makes it that only one group of partisans is likely to be happy with the results, and by default, another group that didn't get to see the information is going to be unhappy. They will understandably be unhappy, and it will allow Republicans and the president to say Democrats are just whining. They're assuming most people are just going to hear the complaint and not look at the actual underlying complaint and what it's about. Again, we are going toward, I think, a dangerous path. That is not to say that James Comey does not have legitimate questions that need to be asked of him about the stories he has told, about why he did what he did as the FBI director in terms of these investigations. That does not mean that the president's lawyers who have sought to make a real issue of Comey's credibility, that doesn't mean that they don't have some points to make. But again, everything becomes, therefore, anything that was ever done is tainted. That is their entire argument. And I think that's very problematic.
And in fact, I find this one particularly strange because having interviewed so many diehard Trump supporters, they like evidence. They look for it. Sometimes they find the wrong evidence online, but they want something to hang their hat on. And the idea that he's providing no evidence that this isn't just standard operating police work, or that he's not giving anything. This is just, he's calling it a different name.
Well, what he does is he actually, I mean, I would argue it a little differently. I think that he and some of his supporters have a conclusion in mind, and then they look for evidence to back that conclusion, and I think that's exactly what he's doing.
The conclusion is deep state in this case, after all of us.
The conclusion is there's a conspiracy to undermine me, to try to delegitimize my election. They, whoever they are coming at me, and therefore they're coming at you. That is what he's saying.